This video is not for persons under the age of 13. By watching this video, you are declaring that you are above 13 years of age. Hello and welcome to today's painting. Chrissy from Chrissy Canvas Art asked me to do a acrylic painting, and she sent me a picture that she liked. It's a winter scene. I've already drawn it in, as you can see, of this forest, but I wanted to add a little bit more to it. So what I've done is I've added this deer to the image as a bit of a motif. A lot of the actual picture itself is very muted, and the deer is not so muted, so I'm going to make some adjustments to that to make sure that it fits in with the atmospherics around it. But this is in acrylic. It's on £150 watercolour. That's different to normal paper, so we'll have a go with this and see how we go. I have here one or two of the brushes that I more than likely will use during this painting. I got this specifically for doing acrylics. It's a big broad brush for doing big washes, and I'm definitely going to be using that. I've got this one here that I recently bought. As you can see, it's got a nice point on it, so if I've got any detailed pointed thin work to use, I've got that. Always handy to have a sword or dagger brush when you're doing trees and things like that, and a rigger brush, and there probably will be some other brushes as well. I mean, I could very easily bring this one in for doing blends. Whether I use that or not, I don't know, but we'll see as we go along. The light in this painting is coming from the left hand side, and I'm expressing that in a very light yellow, creamy kind of a feel. It slowly but surely goes over to the right hand side and becomes a bluer colour, but we'll put that in later. You can put very light expressions of paint in these kinds of acrylics because it's on watercolour painting paper, and that will not underbind. So here I've tested out some blue, and what I'm going to do now is blend some blue into that yellow area. This brush is working really nicely, and what it is doing is it's blending it into the yellow so that we get a seamless blend, and it's creating the atmosphere of going from a light to a darker area, or a warm to a cooler area. Also notice that I add some of both of those two colours into the foreground as well, just to key everything all together. And it's just a matter at this moment in time of making sure that I've covered enough area before I can start putting some stronger paint on, as you can see me doing now. And we build up various layers of this paint now. Just a few more areas to do little bits of painting. This brush has been very good to get large blocks and areas of painting, and as you can see I'm doing the path now, but the path is considerably lighter than the rest of the painting around it, so I won't put too much paint on that. I'm starting to put some deep purpley brown around the edges of the path here to create a, a, an edge of a path as it's a bit muddy, and I'm using a hog airbrush here to create this. It's just very rough. I'm not going for super hyper detail. We're just getting some basic edges in, going a little bit round the deer itself there, but it doesn't matter because we'll get all that back later on. And that area, I'm again doing it very, very lightly, because as you get farther away I want it to be more translucent and fuzzy, as though there's a fog in the background, or very weak light coming through. And I'm trying to build up the foliage around the edge of the trees as well. Add a little bit of that colour into the path that we're slowly but surely making work there, and little bits of bracken and twigs and all that sort of thing that end up on forest floors. So I keep working at this, and it's that same purpley brown, so it's a red and a blue with a little bit of black in it, and that's all you really need to know for that colour. The path is a bit of a sandy brown colour, and I'm using that hog airbrush to create some kind of, almost as though it's a very well beaten path. And again, I'm working around the deer. We don't want to lose the drawing of the deer too much, but if we do, well, it's not that big a deal. So we're getting the foreground path in there, and we'll start to work towards the back of the path leading up the trail to the end of the picture. And it's like a sandstony kind of colour, and we're using a lot of yellow with the colour that we've used just before that, browny purple, and it kind of helps it along that. And these are very light applications, they're very transparent, and you build these things up bit by bit. And if you do get any bits of paint that you think, oh, that's a bit too heavy application, you can always rub it off like I'm doing now, and that can help you create various bits of texture as well. And obviously you can reapply it and no one would know any different. Moving a little bit further on, and I'm going to use some darker version of that brown to put a little bit more emphasis on the dark areas, and see if you can get some more strength into it, because as it dries, because it's translucent, it tends to lose a little bit of its darkness. So you perk it up a little bit by adding another layer over the top of it, and you may need to do this several times. And just doing those bits of bracken and foliage, but you can then use that dark paint to get your main trees in, and this is what I'm doing now. See, I'm not paying too much great attention to strong detail here. They need to be brushed in a way that it's slightly fuzzy and you can just about see what you're seeing, as though the light is having an effect on them. And with later layers you can put a bit more detail in them if you really want to do that. So we keep on getting these background trees in and blocking them in, and we want to be doing this with other brushes as well to give different textures. Now this is a sword brush, which is really good for doing very straight long detail. Now although it's not particularly good for the main part of the tree. It is good for doing the branches, so having one of these is a real advantage for doing all the thin stuff, as you can see now. And I'm not being super deliberate about this. I'm just randomly putting them in. There's no point in trying to exactly copy the picture that you've got. So I'm continuing to use a sword brush to get these branches and far away trees into the image, and you can build that up as much as you feel you want to. I'm being very careful where the light is, not to overpaint that. That needs to be very light. But if you haven't got one of these brushes, you can always use a rigger brush or a very fine brush to paint this kind of thing in. And again, it's all very translucent. I'm not using heavy applications of paint, but you can do that with watercolour paper, because again, it doesn't underbind like a canvas would do with watery applications of paint. So we're not far off moving on to the next stage. We'll just get one or two closer up branches in, and we'll be done with most of the background detail. So now let's concentrate on blocking in the deer, and it's just basic detail just to get it in place. The light is coming from the top left, so there will be bits that will have dark areas in it. But the brush I'm using here is like a flat og hair brush again. I'm not overly critical with the detail, and I've created a very reddish kind of a brown this time, with obviously red and blue, and a little bit of black in it, and making it more biased towards the red, as deers tend to be like a reddy colour, but that's just the base coat underneath it. So I'm preparing another colour for it. We've obviously got the light tones in, so I need a darker version of what I've got. So I've made that very brown, and there are certain areas of the deer that are obviously going to be dark because they're not as well lit, and they're in front of the actual light source, so in theory the deer should be quite heavily silhouetted. But we'll deal with that when we get to the detail. But that's most of the body blocked in. Obviously we're going to go back to things like that, and all we need to do now is figure out where the antlers are, and again, that's another thing that we can emphasise if we need to when we get to the last details and that. But that's the antlers in. I'm just going to put one or two little bit more bits of detail in with the sword brush, and that's me done for that section of the painting. So we have the first part of the painting completed. We've done the atmospherics, and we've blocked in some of the basic details of the painting and got some key colours into the art. What we now need to move on to is creating more tonal value in it, and finalising it with detail, especially around key areas like that. And the painting itself, it has like a frosty kind of leaf area around these parts here, and we'll put them in. All the details that you need to really finish the painting off. So we'll do that in a second part, so look forward to seeing that, and I hope you've enjoyed watching this section, part 1, and we'll be back soon. See you later.